Hello, KFC Supercoaches. It's the Teams podcast, round 11. Massive news coming through in the teams today, and we're going to get through it right now. But first of all, Wilson Smith is back from his little foray into Japan. How's your team going? How's your break?
Man, the break was incredible. I've been planning a Japan trip for a long time, even since before COVID. So it's a long time in the making, and glad I finally got there. But it came at a cost because I didn't really check my team much while I was away, and I now have COVID. So
Wow, yeah.
been battling a little bit, so a little bit of damage control. But despite that, I didn't actually drop that many places during the last few weeks, despite barely checking my team. So ideal outcome, really.
So yeah, hopefully you're on the mend now. Usually it's the reverse with me. If I go on holidays and don't check my team suddenly goes really well with a lack of effort compared to the other way around. In terms of this week, I was hoping for a whole bunch of cheapies to pop up. Last week, I sort of predicted that we would have just this plethora of cheapies come up this week. It hasn't happened like that, unfortunately, with a number of them falling over. Max Fee and I looks like an okay purchase. There's still a few issues there, which we'll get to. And look, here he is going over for a try. I think he's an okay cheapie. Oluwapu, I was hoping would be a great cheapie. That hasn't happened. Tafare, I was hoping would be an awesome cheapie, but they've got the bye. Billy Smith, again, you can wait a week. So I was hoping for these cheapies. They haven't happened. That's the biggest issue facing my team this week. So who to go for? I think it's going to have to be Fee and I. What about yourself?
Yeah, it's pretty bleak out there. Thankfully, I did do some trade outs last week that has got me a fair bit of cash in the bank. I've got almost 500k to spend, so I'm in a bit of a position where I don't really need to bring in a cheapie this week, thankfully, which is good because there's no real good ones. Like you said, Max Fee and I is probably the only good one, and good is a bit of a stretch there. Because obviously there's a few issues around him, mostly around job security. Who knows how long Zach Lomax is going to be on the sidelines for. So thankfully for me, I'm in a decent position where I can just spend some cash and bring in some guns because I do need to overhaul my team a little bit.
Send through your questions and comments, guys. A few coming through on Facebook right now, plus I'll be all over YouTube too. Getting asked, is Joey Manu a buy now? Look, I think you've missed the boat. Probably a little bit late to be getting on, but he has been awesome since moving to 5'8". The other thing there is that dual position changes come in from next week. So Joey Manu will get updated to dual position. He'll be CTW and 5'8". Is it enough to get him in this week? Probably not for me. You had to get on a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I'm the same. I think you've missed the boat, and now I think you've got to be waiting until... the Roosters don't cover the first bye, so I think you've got to be waiting till after that, after then at least.
Let's run through the winners, the losers, the buys, holds, sells, avoids. First on the winners list, let's elaborate on Max Fair Guy because I think he is the cheapie of the week. You're looking at a decent price rise for him. It's his third game, whereas a lot of the other cheapies, it's only their second game coming up rather, so you won't get the price rise. Job security is an issue, but there was a big boost today with Zach Lomax getting left out of that team altogether. He's not even in the squad, so you're essentially guaranteed at least one price rise before we see what the hell is actually going on at the Dragons. And that's the main problem. Is the coach going to be there? Are these positional changes and team changes going to stick next week and the week after and going on? But he does cover around 14 too. So for me, there's a fair bit that adds up to being a decent cheapie. It's not perfect, but if you need cash, he's the man.
Yeah, like you said, we can't have more questions and answers at the moment just because the situation is really like a week-by-week prospect at the moment. But like you said, he does cover the bye, and he will have, you'd think, at least one good price rise in him. And despite the Dragons not playing, they're not playing the worst. They're losing tight every week. But despite all that, he's still scoring okay. So, like you said, there's some concerns there, but there are some ticks against his name as well.
What are your thoughts on Billy Smith? Because he came back after a long injury layoff. He's obviously a gun player, but he just can't string games together due to injury. But he's got a good opportunity now. Joey Manu's moved into 5'8", plus there are some backline injuries going on there too, including Daniel Tupu, Paul Momirovski, etc. So he looks like he could be a decent borderline cheapie at around 290k. I certainly want to wait 1 week and have a look, but I think he's one of these guys to keep up your sleeve next week, and he could well be the most purchased player next week if things work out for him.
Yeah, I mean, if there's anyone you're waiting a week or two on, it's got to be Billy Smith, just because, I mean, I think it's his 4th or 5th year in the NRL, and he's only, he's struggled to play games consistently for his entire career so far due to injury. So, I mean, he's the exact kind of player who would get injured if you bring him in too early. So definitely a wait and see for me, and mostly just because of the lack of cheapies overall. He's not really someone who'd be on my radar otherwise.
Moving on to the losers list, and number 1 on my losers list is actually the most purchased player this week. He's the most purchased by a long way, and I cannot understand it because he's on the bye this week. Yes, he was awesome on debut. Valence Tafare, incredible on debut. Couple of tries. I was at the ground. It was just amazing to watch him steamroll blokes all night. But he's got the bye this week. There's no reason to get on. It could cover round 13. Just wait. Just hang out for a week, maybe even 2, and just see what's going on. There's no reason to jump the gun on a guy whose job security isn't sensational, given that they've got Brenko Lee due back into that team pretty soon as well. So he might get dropped straight away.
Yeah, I mean, he's the kind of player who, I mean, they've got the bye, and maybe, like you said, Brenko Lee's back next week even, and that would mean he's likely out of the side. So I can't really understand this one. Not only are you going too early, but he's also not playing this week. And like you said, there's job security issues. So I'd be hitting reverse on this trade. Definitely keeping an eye on him, but it's way too early.
Hopefully he's the perfect downgrade in round 13. That's what I'm hoping for. Moving on to Jackson Ford. So out with a head knock. He's copped a number of them this year. It's a difficult position to be in because he covers round 13, but he's had that head knock, and so he's out this week. Plus, he's got the bye coming up too, so it's a tough situation on him. I'm going to hold just because I don't think there's a great replacement there this week, but I could easily sell him in the future to someone like Ryan Madison, for example.
Yeah, I'm the exact same. I think for now, I'm just going to hold on to him. Can totally understand why people would want to move on, but I think it's concerning just given how many head knocks he's had already this season. And I think Justavanga is now injured as well. So, I mean, if he wasn't out this week, he would be a decent startable option. So I think I'll be holding for now, but he's someone who is on my radar to. If I have to sell someone, he'd be on that list.
Also on the losers list, I mentioned it before, but Dolphins are on the bye. So you've got Hamiso Tabuai-Fidow and Isaiah Katoa, both really popular sells. You could hold for round 13 coverage, and I can see why you'd get around that. But, I mean, the hammer, you could get down to Max Vianai, for example, or go to Ruben Garrick, who's really popular this week, and I think there's a decent buy. And then Katoa, you could get up to Dylan Brown, who's also really popular this week. So if you're looking at those trades, I wouldn't be wanting to talk you out of it, but both those guys are on the bye this week, so make sure you can cover them.
If you can move Hammer to Ruben Garrick, I'd be doing that. He's probably at the cheapest he'll be for a while, so I'd block that in.
Let's chat about Garrick, because he's number 1 on our buy list. He's the second most purchased player behind Tafare, who we've already said is not a decent purchase. Here he is kicking a goal at Magic Round, I'm assuming. Look, I own him. He covers round 13. He turbos back into that team, so that is good for Garrick. The issue I have is that he's got the bye in round 14, which is actually really tough because the Eels and the Sea Eagles are both on the bye that week. So it's a sneaky tough week, but it's not, to be honest, it's not at the forefront of my mind right now. So Garrick, who I already own and I think would be a purchase this week anyway, given that he's bottomed out after that, a bit of a try drought, plus that move to the wing recently.
Yeah, I bought him a couple of weeks ago, and with hindsight, I could have gotten him even cheaper if I got him this week, and probably would have missed out on some of his dud scores. Luckily, he got, I think, 83 last week without even really doing that much. So that's just what can happen on Manly's attack. They might be looking terrible on the field, but who can score points without even really doing that much. So I think that's why you've got to lock in someone like Reuben Garrick. I really like him as a buy.
Thoughts on Tohu Harris, because he's extremely popular this week, but I've owned Tohu Harris already this season and been burned twice with injury. So I'm saying hold back, get him in round 13 on the dot. Don't go before then, because his knee could break at any point. I don't quite understand why he is so popular this week, but I am a jaded former owner, so I'm taking a completely biased view at this situation.
I really like Tohu, and I'm the same. I had him early on in the season, and I held him through his first round of injuries. And then after the second round, I made the tactical decision. I traded him for Adam Fanua-Blake, which has worked out really well for me the last few weeks because he's been scoring tries and scoring really well. But now that Tohu's back and there's some serious back row injuries there, I mean, I think last week his minutes were a little bit inflated given that he is coming back and still managing injuries. But it just goes to show that with minutes, Tohu scores big points. So he's someone that I'm looking at bringing in the next few weeks, but I think it's still just a little bit too early at the moment.
On the hold list, I've got Mitchell Moses there. So a whole bunch of people got on last week so that he could cover that round 13 bye. Unfortunately, he's out this week due to a concussion, but it looks like it'll only be that 11-day mandatory stand down. So hold him, and hopefully he'll cover that bye for you in round 13. Josh Schuster from the Manly Sea Eagles, your side, will so been named on an extended bench, so there's a chance that he is back into that team. This is good news for SuperCoach, obviously, because he's owned by over 50% of SuperCoaches. The issue is, does he come back on the bench? Does he come back in the back row? Does he play starting 5'8"? It's tough to know, but in any case, seeing him at least in the squad is a boost for SuperCoaches.
Yeah, with especially all the injuries at the moment. Hopefully he is back because and he can stay fit so that he actually covers the bye round, because I think a lot of teams will need him during that period. I've started the season with him, and it's just been sitting on my bench basically the entire season, not doing anything. Like at this point, you can't buy him because who knows how long he'll be on the field for, but you can't really sell him either because he's not making any money, and he hopefully covers the bye round. So good news for super coaches. As a Manly fan, who knows where he's playing. I think the fact that they're playing last game of the round, they're playing the last game of the round on the Sunday against Sharks as well, means if you're depending on him for Supercoach, you really don't know where he fits into the team.
I was really hoping that Carl Olawapu, I mentioned him before, I was hoping he'd be a cheapie for this week. You could go Katoa down to him. Unfortunately, he was great on his first game here against the Dragons. Not so good on Magic Ground, so he hasn't locked in a particularly big price rise. So I've put a line through him as a cheapie for now. The issue is that at some stage he probably comes into that starting team. You just need to get on at that perfect time, and he could be a decent cheapie, but I'm not going to go there this week.
Yeah, I mean, he has a lot of potential to be a really good Supercoach asset. Just the fact that he's coming off the bench at the moment with Josh Reynolds starting, and he's not playing massive minutes that we would really need from him, means that, like you said, put a line through him for now. And definitely keep an eye on him because he could be one to bring like a downgrade option for later on in the season. But for now, it's just not there.
Onto the sell list, and I've actually just got a question come through on Facebook about him right now. Tyrell Sloan. So he has been good for SuperCoach this year. Made us to almost 200 odd K, but then had a shocker on the weekend. Plus he's got the big break even. So I'd be cashing that in, even though he probably covers round 13. I'm saying just cash that in now, and yeah, not worry about round 13.
Yeah, I mean, he has been scoring well, but from what we know from Sloan, the base just isn't there. So if he isn't scoring tries or setting them up, he's just not going to be scoring very highly. And while the Dragons are sort of in the rut that they're in at the moment, I mean, Zach Lomax just got dropped. How long until? I mean, he's kind of blessed by the fact that there isn't a lot of fullback depth there at the moment, so maybe that's keeping him safe in the side. But I do have some concerns over that as well.
And another quick question from Matt White asking Cameron Murray. So a lot of questions about him in Rob's Q&A today. And Rob was sticking by his guns and saying he's going to stick with Cameron Murray. Look, I wouldn't be doing it. A lot of scores in the 40s, a lot of, and Origin coming up as well. So for me, Cameron Murray probably is a sell. But I know that one person, Rob Sutherland, who is on his sick bed at home in COVID, may be suffering some sort of fever. His brain may not be working at 100% capacity. He's saying that there's a hold.
Well, Rob and I both have COVID, and we both agree on this. I'm actually going to be sticking with Cam Murray as well. Right. I mean, there's a lot of red flags there, don't get me wrong. So if you have to sell him, then whatever. But for me, it's just, if I do sell him, I'm taking a massive loss, and I just can't bring myself to lose that kind of cash. So I think I'm just going to be holding him for now. But if anyone puts up a good argument, I could easily change my mind.
I'm going to go through each of the games now. Storm v the Broncos is the first clash. Storm have the same 17. They've got Kama Kamika on the extended bench, though, who could return from suspension. I feel like the big question out of this game, and for the Storm, is Harry Grant. What are you doing with him over Origin? You could go him to Jeremy Marshall-King or someone like that at any stage. Do you do it now, or is it right on 13? For me, it's a trade I'll consider in 13 and see what situation I'm in for that round. We don't know what's going to happen with Origin selections. There could be injury crises between now and then. There's so many things that can happen. So that's a decision to make right on round 13.
Yeah, I agree. He is someone that I think I probably will end up selling, just because there's a chance that otherwise I don't have a startable hooker that week. So I may need to do it out of necessity, but I'm the same. I'll be holding him up until that moment. But I can sort of understand the logic of moving him on early, as a purely tactical move, and to avoid losing a bunch of cash in round 13. Just because the last couple of weeks he's been a bit off. I mean, he scored 54 last week, which is still decent, but you're sort of expecting better things from him. So I could sort of understand moving on early, but I'll be holding up until round 13.
At the Broncos, they've got the same 17 with Kurt Capewell named despite that concussion in Magic round. Bulldogs v the Warriors. At the Doggies, look, Adokari's back into that team, so that's big news, not just for the Bulldogs, but potentially for the New South Wales Blues as well. Supercoach-wise, the guy who's standing out for me is Jacob Carraz with a break-even of 128. Basically has the best base going around in that position at centre wing, so he could be a real cut price purchase for round 14 after that round 13 bye.
Yeah, I moved on from Kiraz a few weeks ago when he was injured, and now I'm getting a bit of FOMO that he's back. I think he got back a bit earlier than I was sort of expecting, which is a bit of a kick in the guts for everyone who sold him early. But like you said, he is a bit of a cut price now, so he's someone that I would consider getting back into my team. The guy I moved him up to down to Greg Marshew a few weeks ago. I'm pretty sure. So that hasn't really worked out so well for me.
Speaking of centre wingers, we're moving on to the Warriors. Obviously, Jackson Ford's out, which is the big news for SuperCoach. Chance Nickel-Klokstad is a guy who is very popular, had a few issues with HIAs, and has got a bye coming up next week as well, which throws cat amongst the pigeons a little bit. Do you have him, and what are your plans with him heading forward?
Yeah, I've started the season with him. I've had him the whole time. It has been a bit frustrating, just given he hasn't really consistently been able to get on the park, and he's missed a bunch of weeks with head knocks. But for now, I think I'm definitely going to be holding him, because when he starts getting back on the field consistently, and he's building a bit of momentum, I think, and I have a good feeling. Plus, the dual position is so handy. It has come up.
Panthers v the Roosters. So at the Panthers, no changes for them. Sunia Taruva is a popular sell. A lot of people sold Nathan Cleary last week, and he banged out 120. And the people that they sold to, Mitchell Moses, the poor bloke, got knocked out. So that move probably didn't come through. For me, with the best 13 rule in the bye rounds this year, you don't need to be selling Origin players like you have in past seasons. So a guy like Cleary is right at the top of my list in terms of guys to hold for that round.
Yeah, I'm totally the same. He's someone that, despite owning him and Snicko, I don't think I'll be going out of my way to sell either of them, just because I'm pretty sure I can get 13 on the park, even with both of them out. So, yeah, I mean, like you said, the fact that we've got this rule means that, unlike in the past, you don't necessarily have to sell all your Origin players, and especially you don't need to be selling them this far. We're still a couple of weeks out from
Oh, sounds like we've lost Wilso there.
Him not playing again. So you don't need to sell these guys early, especially when they have really good. Hello?
Sorry, we lost you there for a bit, Wilso. I'm going to get on to the Roosters now. Egan Butcher out through that HIA. Crichton starts. So Angus Crichton's a guy who could be coming down in price and being a decent purchase in the future. Rabbitohs v the Tigers. No changes for the Rabbitohs, but they do cover that round 13 bye. Latrell Mitchell's on fire. Is Cody Walker sneaking under the radar a bit as a guy who probably doesn't play Origin and could play that round 13 bye for us?
Definitely someone I'm keeping my eye on. And I think a bunch of the Rabbitohs are sort of falling under the radar. Even Latrell, it probably isn't as highly owned as he should be.
Yep, absolutely. Moving on to the Tigers. John Bateman is back from that hamstring issue. That means Kapoa goes back to the bench. Jareen Buller was really popular last week. It was the most popular purchase. Popular again this round. Is a bit too late to be getting on after he's already had his first big price rise.
Yeah, I moved on from Tom Trbojevic to him last week, as much as it hurt, but it helped me generate a bunch of cash, and he is scoring pretty well as well, considering he's playing for the Tigers. Tough matchup this week. I don't know if I'd be betting on the Tigers winning 3 in a row, but even when the Tigers haven't been winning, he's still been scoring pretty well. So, yeah, like you said, I think last week was the week to get on. So you've sort of missed out on his first big price rise. But if you have to do it, I think this is the last week that you can do it.
We're getting a few questions come through about when the dual position changes are activated. That will come in for round 12. So that's next week. So as soon as you open the game, when lockout finishes on Monday next week, the dual position guys will be there, including Joey Manu. There's 9 of them all up so far, plus we've got 3 on Real Watch for this weekend, including Tyrone Peachy, who was really popular last week. So keep an eye out. The story is on the website now. Have a look there. Big opportunities with guys like Joey Manu and Tyrone Peachy in particular. Now, Dragons v the Cowboys. At the Cowboys, they got the same 17, and the Dragons also going with the same 17 despite that loss to the West Tigers. That means, repeating from before, Max B&I is there at centre and no Zach Lomax in the squad altogether. So for me, it doesn't mean he's become a great cheapie, but he means he's good enough to get into my team this week. And obviously, at those price points, you can take risks on these guys.
Exactly, yeah, and like we said at the top of the show, he's not the best cheapie, but he's probably the best option this week if you do need someone. He's pretty much guaranteed at least one big price rise, so it's not the end of the world if you bring him in and he is out of the squad again in a couple of weeks. He would have made you some decent cash, hopefully covered the buy, and he would have done what you needed him to do.
Raiders v the Eels. The good news there is that Hopewadi is back into that team and Xavier Savage drops out. So the job security of Jared Croker is good. We knew that was the case. We pretty much thought that was locked in, but it's good to see that it's actually happened again. And Jared Croker is completely winding back the clock right now. At the Eels, Mitch Moses is out and Brad Arthur comes in. They are a very popular team in Supercoach right now because they cover that round 13 bye. In fact, they cover all big bye rounds. So you've got guys like Dylan Brown, Clint Gutherson, really popular. But the guy I want to pick your brain about is Ryan Madison, playing from the bench. Still going very well from the bench. Is he an option for you before round 13?
He's someone on my radar for sure, but he's one of the guys that I'll be waiting a bit closer to actually the actual buy rounds before I make a decision. The fact that he's playing off the bench, even though he's scoring well, is still concerning to me. But I think what's good to know is that the Eels have a bunch of quality back row options, and he's still getting decent minutes off the bench. So he's someone that I'm considering, but I need to see a little bit more before I make a decision.
Knights v the Titans. Good to see the Knights back after that bye. So guys like Greg Marju are back and available for us. At the Titans, just the one change for them with Leeming back on the bench and the debutant Keanu Keeney dropping to 18th man. I'm going to take a question now. We're getting a lot of Harrison Edwards from the Dogs. FRF played 2 games and got a 44 and now has a -8 BE. Look, not the worst shout there. Front row is not a position where I'm looking to stack it with cheapies because there's not the money to be made there as there is at sort of centre wing, for example. But it's a good one to point out.
Yeah, I hadn't really considered him, to be honest, but I might need to take another look. If he's bottom dollar, it might be the only chance to get rid of someone like Davi Moale, who's just been rotting away on my bench, barely making any money.
I'm still hoping Moale covers round 13. He's gone for that clean out of his knee. And look, he's going to be racing the clock for it, but let's hope that he is back for then. Your Sea Eagles, I guess the big thing there is Schuster is named on the extended bench, so he could come back into that team. And Ruben Garrick, obviously really popular this week. Tom Trbojevic, can we talk about him? What's going on? I got to watch him live at Magic Round over the weekend, and I'll tell you what, it was pretty confronting viewing, just watching him hobble around so much and not being able to keep up with the play.
Yeah, I think it's really concerning just how, the Manly keep coming out and saying that he's not playing injured, but all you have to do is watch him to see that he's not running at 100%. I think if you've held on, I think you've just got to pull the pin and move on. The other thing I'll say about this matchup as well is that hopefully, given how poor the Sharks were last week, I'm kind of hoping that Supercoaches panic a little bit and don't chuck the captaincy on Nico Hines again this week. I had him captain last week and that was horrible, but Manly just are not playing well at the moment. So I'm keeping my eye on him as a captaincy option this week, despite how bad he was last week.
Yeah, I mean, even at Four Pines, you guys usually fire up when it's at Brookvale Oval, but you're thinking it's not going to happen this week.
I think from what I saw last week, I've got a lot of concerns. Even with how bad the Sharks were, I think they'll fire up.
Yep, no, fair enough. Speaking of the Sharks, no real changes for them. It's essentially the same 17, except that Finucane's starting in place of Cameron McInnes. We're getting some questions about Corey Horsburgh. So it's from Johnny Rio, who says Tino to AFB, who I assume that you like that trade, given that you own Adam Fanua-Blake, or the red nut from ACT, who is Corey Horsburgh.
Of those two, I'd definitely be going AFB. I mean, you've kind of missed the last 2 weeks where he's been scoring really well, but I believe that Corey Horsburgh is going to get picked for Origin. So the reasons you bring him in, I think won't end up actually paying off. Whereas Adam Fanua-Blake, obviously, he's a Kiwi and he won't be playing Origin and covers that first round bye. So it's tough because Corey is a bit cheaper. But I just don't think he's going to actually, be there for the reasons you're bringing him in.
Right, I'm going to try and take one more question. We got Valance should get a run in round 12? Question mark. It's hard to know. I guess it depends on Lee. You got Ewan Aitken. Is he just a left side centre? Is he just a left side centre, or is he just a right side centre, or does he play left too? So many question marks. You don't need to move this week. Just take a look after the bye. Maybe even wait another week as well, and then his price will go up. That is it for our Teams podcast, round 11. Big thanks to Wilson Smith for rising off his sick bed in the middle of a chief of staff shift as well. I know that people watching probably don't understand how big that is, but it's a big play from Wilson Smith just to be here today. So a massive thanks to you, and good luck to all super coaches this weekend.